Sweet. So let's talk about exercise number 6. And like I was saying, there's going to be a couple of parts to this one. So definitely switching gears, and don't get me wrong, if you're still in kind of the process, please don't let this make you feel behind. I'd just like to introduce these a little earlier because, some of us are already complete. We have essentially nothing else to do. And of course, a majority of the class is still, of course, working on exercise 5. However, this one's entitled Drawings, AI, and WACOMs, right? So don't get me wrong, drawings definitely applies to architecture. We do nothing but drawings. Whether it's digital, whether it's analog, we produce drawings, documents, right? Even our construction drawings are a little bit different. Those become legal documents, right? Literally somebody can get sued or go to jail over those documents. So it's a big deal, right? How serious we treat our documents. However, it's good to pay attention to your market, right? Or who you're actually displaying to. In studio, who are you presenting to? Professor. Usually the professor is your client. What about during a jury? Your jury members, right? Usually other professionals in architecture, and they're going to be looking for those kinds of things that relate to architecture. In our case, as we wrap up our study models, it is best not to get lost in the madness of our digital file, as you can see here, of our design process can lead to. For our next exercise, you are assigned with taking your digital models and transcribing it, as we have done before in our previous assignments and exercises. In our next tutorials, we will also be adding Adobe Photoshop to the workflow and add a touch of context for the project to fit in as if it were a studio project would require. However, for this exercise, you have creative freedom and is always encouraged when exploring the model. We can use NVIDIA Canvas and Lumion to further develop the context of our projects. Some of the deliverables, as you guys some of you guys even already have, we'll be making 3 floor plans, so a bottom, some sort of middle, and of course the very top. The very top is almost considered a roof plan because it shows the entire object. However, I do call it a floor plan. So I'll show that briefly, just in case you missed the clipping plane. I did say I'd go over that a little bit more. Sections, I'm looking for at least 1. Honestly, if you could produce 2, that's always better. To be fair, you can produce as many as you want with this clipping process, right? And actually maybe even pick the best one. For instance, how many times have you guys wondered where you should cut your building? Anybody? I know I did, especially as a student. Professor, where do I cut it? Well, I can show them 3. Cut it in all these different ways and go, sir, ma'am, which one do you think expresses my space the best? After all, that is why we cut sections. That's why we cut plans, because it further communicates the literal spatial qualities of our object, right? And there's definitely some standards. If you have taken graphics 1 or graphics 2, you need up arrows, you need north arrows, you need graphic scales, you need other information that actually implies what that 3-dimensionality is. So of course we'll go over that as well. Obviously, process diagrams, and to be fair, you guys already all did this with exercise 3, right? You came up with some different views, maybe a diagram or 2 to express how you came up with those unique shapes. So some of this is actually already done and maybe just needs to be reworked or reformatted for a coherent, nice display. And lastly, 1 exploded axonometric. And I know everybody's heart just dropped for a second because you maybe did one in graphics 2, and it was a headache, right, to say the very least. How many of you guys got to an exploded axon in graphics 2? Usually it's the last thing you do, if you even get to it, right? How many of you at least did a axonometric? Usually that's a staple, right? Not only of graphics 1, but usually by graphics 2, you've done at least an axonometric. And even in our class, you've done an axonometric with your stairs and even this final drawing for exercise 5. That being said, obviously we'll be grading it by accuracy, line weight, and really creative efforts here. I really want to see who is starting to add context, who's starting to make the narrative, right? Can we really put ourselves there? Is there a guy walking the dog? Is there, a kid on the stroller? Are we really building the event here, right? Don't get me wrong, we all fall in love with objects as architects, I think. We can make objects and we're like, that sculpt's really beautiful. But at the end of the day, most of who we talk to or communicate to or market to are non-architects. And let me tell you, If they don't get it, they don't want to invest in it, right? If they can't see how it's marketable, they won't buy it, and they'll give it to the next architect. And there's usually 12 other architects trying to get the same job, right? So it's very competitive, and in my humble opinion, the reason I keep winning all the jobs is because I can draw right in front of them. And two, I really build the story, right? I can really put the other person there, and I can talk about my drawing as I do it, right? And see, there they are walking the dog. Can you picture it? They've got the coffee in their hand. They're ready to go. That's money in the bank for you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, right? At the end of the day, let's face it, money talks in America, right? And a lot of decision makings, especially in architecture, are not only based on the energy consumption or, really marketability, but how much does it cost at the end of the day? And in 10 years' time, is it going to make money? A lot of people don't understand that the architecture alone can bring people to it, right? There's a reason that Walmart looks nice on the front and looks like a warehouse on the back. Don't get me wrong, I think people still would shop at Walmart, but that person is like, ugh, Walmart, I don't want to be there. That facade in the front helps them a little bit go, hey, this is about me. This is nice, like how I see myself. I'm willing to buy at Walmart now. There's a huge reason people go to Target instead of Walmart. Why? Because the products are honestly the exact same. They're just a little bit marketed differently, right? What's hilarious is you got places like Central Market or Target that literally sell the same products at a higher price, and people don't mind paying it. Why? Because of the atmosphere, because of the popcorn smell when you walk into Target, because of the ices, the colors. A lot of that stuff actually is what gets people going there over and over again. Sometimes it's location. Well, Target's right next to my house and Walmart's right next to my house, but maybe I might go a little bit more distance, if you will, to go to that other architecture building. The reason I say this is because as an architect, guys, eventually you're the one who makes somebody's business the money that they're looking for, right? And you're the one who actually convinces them that, hey, you need to spend an extra $200,000 on this door because it's actually going to return your investment in 10 years. You're going to make $1 million because you're going to increase your amount of population going into your building by 90%, and that's good, right? Things like this. However, we can't predict for things like 2020, and they shut down everything. I mean, everything except large companies. Anyway, so as we're talking about it today, I just want to go over really the rhinoceros part first. As you can see, where we left off last time is, of course, in exercise 5. We built a topography, and last time we definitely talked about turning this into a model. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup what I had. That way, of course, everything can be selected. And thank goodness I made a copy, right? Because I can't explode that too well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can hit explode and it's going to be a lot of pieces. Definitely a lot harder to take apart and create an exploded axon, as well as the clipping plane. So the first thing I want to do is, of course, make my assignment 6 box and make a copy, right? After all, I'm going to use my model again. We'll call this my complete model. I never really actually completed my model. Keep that in mind. Mine definitely has mistakes and things like that. So we'll go ahead and copy it and start assignment 6. For the sake of my computer not crashing, especially while I'm recording my screen, you'll notice it definitely has a harder time. Some of you guys were asking this last time, how do I get my computer to go a little bit faster? Keep in mind that it uses a lot of processing power for all that stuff on there. And if you're noticing your computer slowing down, hide the rest of the information and you'll notice it goes a lot faster. It's no longer having to use its resources in order to produce those things. So again, just kind of a reminder. But that's looking pretty good. And I may even need multiple copies if I kind of want to do different drawings or different clipping planes. However, just as a reminder, you can type in clipping plane and essentially create that box. By default, it basically puts it in kind of a flat and on your C-plane. However, once you click, you're like, oh my God, where did everything go, right? And it's now being controlled by what looks like a section cut, right? If you guys remember from Graphics 1 or Graphics 2, we definitely put those little arrows in order to actually show which direction that it's looking or that it's cutting. Keep that in mind because it's definitely useful. I can definitely switch this thing around and do all kinds of things, right? To be fair, I used to like animate stuff, So I would do like frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, and make something like kind of materialize, right? It looks pretty cool. You can do all kinds of things with clipping plane, but I think most of us are going to see its benefit, obviously, in studio when it comes to producing drawings from a model. So first things first, I might want to produce my floor plans. So keep in mind, and I saw some of you guys did it wonderfully in your stairs. Really great stuff. And in terms of the clipping plane, like Gerardo's, definitely take a look at his, as well as some of the others that actually produce some plans. However, the only thing that was missing on them is the up arrows, the down arrows, right? The information, the graphic standards that actually make that make sense. Now, don't get me wrong, it makes sense to us, especially a professor. We get it. It's either going up or down. However, to the investor, they just see some lines. They don't really see, they weren't trained the same way you and I were, right? So we do have to further communicate it. And there's definitely a couple ways that we can do so. Shade and shadow can be a huge one. The idea of depth perception could be huge for somebody who doesn't really understand or even able to orient themselves. Do you have that friend? You're like, which way is north? And they have no idea. Like they've never, you know, without their GPS on their phone, they'd be absolutely lost, right? That might be you as well. Myself, I haven't used a map since, God, like 1999. But just because we do have the technology now, GPS is pretty good. Actually, it wasn't always good. But in our case, I'll use clipping plane in order to produce these. Now, by default, you may notice that you don't even see it clipping in this view. If that be the case, make sure that you actually click on the clipping plane, go over to properties, that little wheel, and make sure that your other views are checked, right? I think we had this problem maybe last time. But as soon as I do check those, right, you'll see that my top view has, of course, changed, right? So just keep that in mind. From here, essentially, I'll just make 2D. In my case, I accidentally chose the wrong one. There we go. Hidden lines, I probably don't need hidden lines, but let's see what it produces. Better to have it than not have it. And another thing I wanted to point out, just because maybe I forgot to tell you guys, I do apologize, is that you want to maintain source layers. That's huge, because by default, I do think it's actually from the input objects. So just kind of be careful with that. I noticed some of you guys having a hard time in Illustrator, and it was like, well, do I go back? And you're kind of just like, what's funny is that you think you're taking the lazy route, but you're actually taking the harder route, right? The lazy route is actually just going back to Rhino and reproducing, right? Based on your layers. That way you can go to Illustrator and it goes way faster. That's actually the lazy route. However, I get it. I was definitely that student too that was like, oh man, I can't go back now. That's 2 steps back. That's unprogress, right? And I remember those thoughts. Please, for the love of God and all that is holy, try to reduce these thoughts, because you're in command, you're in control, and you want to build that confidence that you know what you're doing, right? So never feel bad about going backwards, right? Because sometimes 1 step back can lead to 3 steps forward, right? But in that case, I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to produce a drawing for us way the heck over here. And as you can see, it only got 1 object. What's going on? However, sometimes this happens if you don't actually get all the objects. And as you can see, I didn't get all the objects. What's going on? I may need to actually go to my layers and go, okay, is it locked? Why can't I select anything? Oh, is it grouped? Grouped items don't show up in Make 2D. So again, we must ungroup and take out some of those pieces. Luckily, I do have some things layered, so we should be okay in terms of the exploded axon. However, I do have an extra copy. So one thing that is kind of nice about this clipping plane is that the object's not really not there. So if you ever need to like make another copy on the fly, you definitely can. Keep in mind though, it is going to be applied to every model, at least in terms of clipping plane, right? There's no real way to kind of stop that. It just kind of is what it is. Now let's go ahead and make 2D. That one should definitely take a little longer. And we could definitely produce those lines for ourselves. So we got floor plans, and don't get me wrong, we could start to hatch them. We can do all the necessary things that we want to do before we actually get it into the program. So for instance, maybe I don't need those. those. And it looks like I actually got my bottom lines rather than, oh, it got some of my objects, as you can see. It missed my stairs. I think my stairs are still grouped. So again, just keep in mind if you're Make 2D and things and they don't come out, check your objects, right? However, from here, I think a section, you know, really same thing. And again, keep in mind, everything will disappear. But my goodness, what a game changer, no? Could even have a rendered section drawing. I don't know about you, but I would have killed for this in studio, knowing this, right? Because I sat there all the time, kind of reorienting myself, trying to calculate these things. Don't get me wrong, those are all very good traits to have and necessary in graphics 1 and 2. However, the rest of the world is not doing it anymore that way. They build the model first, and then they're dicing it and cutting it and letting just kind of things fall into place. Now, don't get me wrong, there's honestly, in my opinion, some problems with that because, well, designers are no longer thinking about really the space and how I interact with it, but now they're thinking about more the Instagram, how does it look from the outside? How does it look, right? Not how does it feel, how does it work? So keep in mind, those questions in architecture, they fall to the wayside in the digital realm, however, are still very important. But pretty nice, you know, doing pretty well there. Probably could turn the shade and shadow off. It's kind of intense. Woo. Let's get that a little, oh, okay. There we go. Nice. And already right there, I mean, what a heck of an explanation just made like that, right? If I really needed to get that point across. But that's looking pretty good. So I got my sections, I got my floor plans, and I could even turn off the clipping plane. To be fair, I usually just delete it and add another one, right? So actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if you can add multiple clipping planes. I've never actually tried. Oh my God, you could put 2 clipping planes. That's a game changer. Not gonna lie, that's pretty cool. I've never done that before, but hey, not that you'll need it, honestly, in today's assignment or this exercise, but I can definitely think of a couple of cases where it'd be really nice to do that to a model. So like almost keep 3/4, but then like take a 4th model out. Be kind of nice, right? Anyway, this is kind of that quarter piece I'm looking at to like take it out. But anyway, very confusing for definitely the non-architecture inclined person. But again, clipping plane. Next we'll have actually our exploded axon. So from here, what's kind of nice, and this one should be pretty familiar, you don't need to make it an axonometric. So now we're at the Wacom tablet, and I did want to show off a couple of things. So for instance, you'll notice there's a lot of movability, right? So we can even use it as like a drafting table, right, and stand up normally just like you would in any other class. Keep in mind, be careful, use 2 hands, right? You'll notice that there's actually a bunch of buttons on the back, almost like a PS2 controller. You'll have like the 2 kind of buttons here. As you can see, they all do stuff, right? And we can do all kinds of things with these buttons. However, if you just go and press a bunch of them, you'll see it produces a lot of things. Another thing is there's a switch in the back. If the touch is absolutely annoying you, you can turn it off. Right, because sometimes you're drawing and your palm, it does actually have really good palm recognition. I mean, it's like up there with an iPad to me. But, you know, sometimes I turn it on, sometimes I turn it off. There is a settings button. Obviously, please don't switch it to some crazy language. In our case, we'll go ahead and choose English. But this is where you can change some of the things or start to understand that it's still an 8-bit color and actually working at 120 hertz, which is really good. It's a good frame rate. From here, there's also a power button. I'm not going to click that one, but and a couple of programs. So the way that this is actually movable, and you may actually want to get a little bit behind her. You'll notice there's this slider. I'll just move it a couple times for the video. It locks, right? So when that slider is up, you'll try and move it. Don't like overdo it. It's not going to move. Right? Unlock it first, and then you can move it, right? And it does actually move pretty well. To be fair, you can even get it down pretty close, we can move some of the mice and peripherals out of the way. And we can get it pretty darn close to the ground. I mean, arguably not bad. It also rotates, right? So if you need to do something like that, it's pretty versatile. And there are a lot of rubber things across it, but do your best to not leave it like that, right? I mean, that just looks bad, right? Take care of them. Like I said, they're more expensive than my first Toyota Corolla, right? Let's just put it that way. It was $4,000, and these are like $4,100, right? So that's looking pretty good. And you know, if I wanted to lock it in place, I could. To be fair, honestly, unlocks. It doesn't move around that much either. You kind of have to push it a little bit. Anyway, so you'll notice the pin. Essentially, it'll come in that box, and I'll go ahead and put the code for that lock on Miro. Keep in mind, it's really only you guys who get to use this, right? It's only those who have basically watched this video and gone over the training. With that being said, you'll notice it's essentially just a screen, you know, and it has kind of a marker sound, right? What's nice is it is a pretty hard screen. I mean, to kind of show you what I mean by that, let's get my keyboard. We'll go to our Wacom Center. When you type in Wacom, there's actually a lot of different options. There is a button that obviously you guys saw that kind of pop up, but you can go to grip pin, which is what this is, and you can kind of test some things out too. So for instance, if that's too firm or too hard, I could definitely get it in there, right? I could do really soft and you'll see what that does. But you kind of want to test that. I have kind of a hard hand, so I usually use maximum, but you can really press. And when you lightly press, very touch sensitive, right? In fact, it has 8,162 layers of sensitivity, which is just, I don't even know how, right? But it really is kind of one of those, if I press harder and press softer, right? It really does make the difference. And arguably, you can't even tell the difference between analog and digital. So just a couple settings and things like that. The next thing I wanted to show was obviously some of the software that we have now. And this one, it's called Nvidia Canvas. Keep in mind, it only works with the RTX system. So if you have an RTX graphics card, awesome. If you don't, use this one. All of these computers have RTX graphics cards and already this information installed. Now what's kind of nice is, well, if I use, say, my drawing and I want to produce a background, right? Or maybe, you know, these kinds of things. I can go to standard, press OK, and you'll notice a couple things. By default, what's kind of neat about this is it completely uses AI, but it's not on the internet. It's based on the, basically, the graphics card, right? So for instance, if I need clouds and I draw some clouds, it immediately produces those clouds. See that? Instantly, right? Let's try a different situation. Maybe let's add some mountains. Obviously, maybe I don't need clouds. So maybe let's try some mountain information. And you could really treat it kind of harshly. I mean, don't like sit there and try to like scratch it. We'll get some mountains in there, maybe off into the background. Let's get, I want some cloud cover. Maybe, man, I don't want a dark scene. I want a day scene or beach scene or mountain scene or what have you, right? And let me tell you, normally we would go into Photoshop, we'd find a background, we'd find some trees, we'd kind of hodgepodge it all together. But why do that when you can just take a single image, right? Now what's nice is I can have on the side maybe my elevation, right? That way I can start to kind of figure out some things, or maybe I want to choose a perspective to show some of my objects, but I want to definitely put it there. So just to kind of undo that demonstration. Let's say San Antonio, in my location, it's San Pedro Springs Park, and I'm thinking my object will be about right here. So I'm thinking some grass area for sure. I'm thinking midday, so I don't know, maybe something a little brighter. In my case, it looks like there's like sand going on there, so I'm gonna get some like better grass. But very much like Microsoft Paint, right? Let's see, let's get some trees in there. Not those trees. And to be fair, I should practice this program a little bit more as well. Let's get some trees in there. Well, clearly this is more like a branch than a tree. Okay, we got some of there. But I mean, you can really make it what you want, right? Definitely nice. Yeah, some grass. I like to add some flowers. Why not? Can barely tell, but it's kind of what makes the difference, right? And really makes it our own too. That I can't express that enough. What's nice about this is not only is it quick, but it's still our own, right? I still drew it. Don't get me wrong, I used the AI tool, but really it took me, of course, able to do that. It does look like I still need kind of some, maybe like a cityscape. I mean, that's the only thing that kind of stinks about this. I'd still have to kind of put like San Antonio in the back if I still needed that, but a little bit easier to remove the backgrounds and things like this. But you could definitely test some things out. Some cloud cover. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, so obviously we could use that and we could file save it, just like any other program. So in our case, export, and we can work with it in, right? So we could even switch it to a PSD, which is a Photoshop file, and say, cool test, man. And let's go ahead and open that up in Photoshop, see what it looks like. Hopefully it's on my desktop. I didn't even see where I saved it. Dang it. My bad. Let's try that again. Oh, I put in pictures. I think by default it goes in pictures. We'll just call it test. Nice. I exported it the wrong file type, my bad. PSD. Take two. There we go. So let's go ahead and open that file, and you'll see that it actually gives us both, right? It gives us both the preview that we used, right? And of course the one that it produced. Don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna go with that one, right? Of course, want to be able to go with that one. But what is nice is that you can actually see what you produced and why it produced what it did. However, it doesn't, at least not yet. Keep in mind this program is actually entirely in beta. So, but again, we can add context very easily. Now, of course, in my case, I take my Make 2D and I'd start to make that more realistic. In fact, don't get me wrong, this is deeply saturated. But again, another reason I like the touchscreen is it is way easier to work in Photoshop with it, right? But what's nice is now I can use my brush tool. In my case, obviously on a different layer. Brush, B, I can use the click button. And I need to actually load a little bit more brushes in here as well. That way you guys can do some things. But I mean, we could really get the architecture going. I could even put my drawing there and trace it, right? And nobody would ever even have known that I did it actually in Rhino. Right, let's say that was my building, scale figure. And I can really start to dial things in. So I could take my automatic, maybe actually darken that. And take a little brighter. And in my case, I don't like a really rich background. I'm gonna reduce it like a lot. I'm gonna add another layer, put it at the bottom, and give it a white background. So in my case, I might have to flip to the tools. It doesn't have my same defaults. I'm looking for a fill bucket tool. Sometimes you can just right click on all these. There it is. We'll get our white, click it, and it's a little too much, maybe 20%. Okay. just because I know that's going to print out well and it's going to make my architecture stand out a little bit better. Obviously, I shouldn't probably use a white marker. But again, another thing that's really nice is these are all pretty realistic too, and they're based on the Wacom, right? So you'll notice if I go really lightly, well, let's use a, you barely see it. You guys see that? It's almost like a charcoal look. Did you guys ever do the charcoal studies with Professor Garcia? Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How different it might have been. I could actually get pastels.
I couldn't stand inside rooms.
I can't stand the mess. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I do not like getting my hands dirty. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the Bible, but Bible, like, paper, like, cringe every time. I'm like, yeah. It's like super thin rice paper. But again, I think you can see the advantages of using some of these tools. Obviously, in my case, E for eraser, and we can really start to feel like, you know, I don't have to scan every time I want to draw something. Another thing that's great, and let me use, obviously I'm using like these charcoal pens and things aren't coming out great. I'm going to use a hard round brush, so something that's more like a brush. But what's great is I can click, hold shift, click again, and I can make straight lines all day, right? Of course, I can freak out my computer, thinks I have sticky keys, but I don't. In my case, I draw all the time with these. In fact, I draw on it every day now and create different pieces of architecture, right? Whether it be in section or... But again, what's really nice is now I have the ability to do so, right? I can draw on this quite literally. It'll actually capture the smooth and it'll capture the rough as well. Also, another thing to mention that I forgot to mention, be careful with this button. It does control a lot. Usually what I like to do is kind of put it here, like put my index finger and kind of go that way, just because usually this part of my finger will kind of hit those buttons and it's just kind of convenient, right? Another thing is if you have an eraser, you can erase it too. So it's pretty intuitive, to say the very least. But again, only you guys get to use it. Now, I will say, these are kind of the old pens, but they still work. These are even cheaper, actually. They're like $36 on Amazon. And if you really are interested, let me know, because I can give you the link, and we'll find you the best price if you want to invest in yourself that way. Now that you are at least somewhat familiar with this technology, I know it's going to take some practice, and if you haven't taken freehand 1 or 2, it might just be even more foreign to you, right? So keep that in mind. Obviously, this is for those of us who have really already, like, man, I want to make a 1-point perspective. How do I do that? I can hold shift. I can hold shift here. And of course, I need to turn off sticky keys. Poor computer. But I can really start to produce that 1-point perspective if I want to. I can give it the shaky line like I learned from Escamilla, right? And it even messes up like I do, right? It matches all those things. But again, I could take these pieces. Maybe I don't need all those pieces after all. I can do Command T. You can hold Shift. Make that a little bit more realistic. Right? Kind of have that kind of scene going. And I could erase from that object as well. I can hold Shift. Oh, make sure you erase. God damn sticky keys. Is there a way? Disable. Yes, please. Sticky keys. There we go. I don't know. Sometimes I like to just do stuff by hand because it's cool. But again, unfortunately, there's not any other teachers who know how to use this. So, are you okay there? It's like R2-D2 going on.
It does that.
Yeah, I'll take copy. Let's rotate it or flip it. So in my case, flip horizontally. Let's move that kind of right there. It's kind of got the weird mirror image. We got 2 suns going on, but definitely kind of nice, right? If I was starting to build something. Now, obviously, this is just a tutorial. I'm not really doing anything important, but we're going to continue, of course, part 2 with a lot of Photoshop tools and things like that. So what I would say, at least for part 1, is definitely try to produce your line drawings and get them in a suitable file type, right? So obviously, taking in those lines into Photoshop is a little bit different. We'll cover that first in part 2. So, pretty cool. Want to mess with it? Like, no, it's too expensive. Don't worry, you won't break it, and even if you do, it's okay. Not really. I'll come down on you like a ton of bricks, but just kidding. But we'll get into it. Obviously, the next couple of weeks, once we dive into Revit, not entirely useful anymore, but we do have about 2 minutes left. So is there any questions that kind of just generated so far? Fair enough. I feel like I've scared all of you guys somehow. Hopefully not. But we're eventually going to get into Photoshop, so if it's foreign to you, that's okay. Play around with it, mess with it, right? Things like that. Play around with this program if you want. What's cool is you can draw it here too. But yeah, all these computers have it, so feel free to play around with it. Thank you, sir.